I'm lucky enough to have on the line with us today the president and CEO of Graycliff Exploration, which is Jamie Macintosh, who's a good friend of mine. I'm actually super excited for this presentation, as this is an earlier stage opportunity that I think has a lot of potential. They've just started their initial drill programs, and I think you're going to see some really cool results coming out from them in the future. So I'll pass it off to you, Jamie, not to steal your thunder, and just remind everybody that you can put your questions in the chat, and we will answer them at the end. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Seb. I'm looking forward to this as well. And I've got a little something at the end for those who haven't already seen our press release from this morning. Graycliff Exploration is a brand new company. We launched it in August of 2020. Took us about a year to get it public. And we did it via non-offering prospectus. It's a really exciting project in the Shakespeare Gold Project, which is about 80 kilometers west of Sudbury. We completed the first phase of drilling in just around Christmas. One of the things that I think is interesting, we're not only listed on the CSE under Gray, we are also listed on OTCQB with GRYCF, and of course in Frankfurt with GE0. It's an extremely tightly held structure. With about 5 or 6 phone calls, we can access over 60% of the shares. Management has deep experience and strong expertise in gold startups. We've got a strong board with success in Canada. It's the Sudbury flag for those of you who don't know it. Project's in a really well-known geology on the Canadian Shield, and it's right at the contact between the Archean, Southern, and Superior geologic provinces. We've got excellent infrastructure. We're just off the Trans-Canada Highway. When I drove up there in November, we actually drove right into the site. There's hydro within 1 kilometer, and there's water access right at site. We've got an educated workforce, and our drillers, and this is an important thing in this environment, which is a hot geology market, our drillers are shareholders. So we have a dedicated crew that aren't going to be picked off by somebody else willing to pay a little bit more. Property consists of 39 mineral claims covering about 850 hectares. And the middle of the property is the former Shakespeare mine. It was in operation from 1903 to 1907. They sank the shaft as they did in those days because there was one sample that a gentleman named Miller, and you'll notice on our maps later that we call it the Miller Shaft. He found a sample that was $5,000 per ton when gold was 20 bucks an ounce. So that's essentially a very, very high grade ore, and they basically sank the shaft because of that. They dug it out by hand. About 3,000 ounces were produced. In those days, that was about $56,000 worth of revenues. Now it would be over 5 million. So we've completed the first phase of the exploration, which was doing a fairly intensive desktop study, some field sampling, and about 1,100 meters of drilling. And that ended just at the end of 2020. And we're now starting to see those results. We got the results from the first 2 holes a couple of days ago and released those, and we announced 2 more holes this morning. We will be doing further drilling, and depending upon the breakup, and of course, once things turn to mud up there, you can't drill, but we're hoping to get between 1,000 and 1,500 meters of drilling before breakup. And then we'll be doing further work up there as well. So there's very significant potential for mineralization on this property. And you can see there's the Miller Shaft with the 2 drill holes that we added, J1 and J2. The red holes were 2014 holes drilled by GeoNovis. And so we were looking at expanding the extent of the mineralization and getting a better idea of structure. The gold in this, so far, what we're finding is it's in quartz veins and quartz stockworks. Everything is highly metamorphosed, a lot of deformation, a lot of faulting, a lot of folding. We are essentially a splay off the Murray Fault, which goes through the center of the property. And one of the things that makes this property unique, one of the things I like about it, is the fact that the Miller Shaft is on top of about a 160-foot cliff. The number 3 adit, which is filled in at the moment, but we are reopening it, goes in right at surface. So you've got 150 feet at least of drilling, which is a lot of the drilling we've done so far, that is all above surface at the bottom of the at the entrance to the adit. If you look at this property, you can see in addition, hopefully you guys can see when I zoom in, that there is copper, gold, nickel, PGEs, cobalt. We're focusing on the gold, and it happens to be that where we have the gold, we also have copper in a lot of places along the current area we're drilling. Let's go back here. Come on, there we go. So we really believe that there's an awful lot of potential this property. The limited exploration that's been done really looked at doing massive step outs far to the northeast and far to the southwest. In 2014, when Geonovus had the property, they did a fairly new strategy, and they looked at trying to get a better idea of where the gold was finding and how it was structurally controlled, or whether it was not structurally controlled. We're looking at taking that to the next level. And that's what the current phase 1 and phase 1 part 1 and phase 1 part 2 is going on. So after numerous reviews of historical reports, some of which going back to the 20s, we believe we're now going to get a better idea of the structure. And the next piece after that will be reopening the number 3 adit to carry out further exploration and maybe to even do some drilling up from underground. You can see on this picture of the cross section where we had 4.6 meters of 5.4 grams. That included 0.8 meters of 23.6 grams, but it also included 2 meters of 3 grams. It's important to note when you look at this cross section that the holes are over 10 meters apart at surface, and they're over 15 meters apart at the end of our hole. So we're pretty excited about that. It just gives a greater extent of mineralization. So as we said earlier, we did 1,100 meters, 7 holes. I talked about what we had in J1. In J2, we had 1.5 meters of 1.7 grams, and that was at 115 meters. And then lower down at 137 meters, we had 3.7 meters of 0.82 grams. And what's interesting about this and what we liked about it was it identified a second interpreted zone of mineralization in blue, the red being the original interpreted zone. And we found that the original zone in red extended at depth and is still open at depth. So you have 2 zones now that are parallel, which if you look at the top of the diagram, you can see the Miller shaft in blue. So it's just further confirmation that we're finding the structure where we expect to, and we're extending the limits of the mineralization along strike and at depth. So I think I will have some more on this, but really what we're looking at now is in phase 2, another 1,000 to 1,500 meters of drilling. And we're hoping that we can get all that done before spring breakup. But once you get spring breakup, it's going to be mud everywhere, and we won't be moving the drill. So that'll be the extent of that. We'll then get the assays back, do some analysis, and look at doing some 3D modeling of the maybe I'm hoping as many as 14 holes that we have then drilled, and we'll be able to get a better idea of the structure, and we can plan the next phase of exploration. In addition, during this summer, we look at doing line cutting and some ground IP, and we're also hoping to do another round of drilling. In summary, the company, 35 years experience. I started as a geologist. I joined the brokerage business as a junior mining analyst in '86. Was doing flow through when gold was $350 an ounce. And I've been left that side of the business and went back to doing corporate development We raised a lot of money for a couple of interesting Latin American mining companies. And we put a couple of those mines or those deposits into production in Panama, Colombia, and Nicaragua. I was also the lead director for Carlisle Goldfields during the sale to Alamos, and I'm invested in a number of sort of private and other companies. Giulio Di Girolamo and I worked together for 22 years. He was our auditor at one of the companies I was working at. Kyler Hardy is fairly well known in the business if you're from Vancouver, and even if you're not, he's been a very successful entrepreneur and an excellent chairman for us. Our technical advisory board is Bruce Durham, who many know, extremely accomplished geologist, PGEO. He's RQP, and of course he has had significant success with the David Bell mine, the Golden Giant mine, Bell Creek mine, as well as nickel in Timmins. Don McKinnon Jr. is the son of the famous Don McKinnon Sr., the founder of Hemlo, an extremely experienced prospector who's been prospecting most of his life. And he's very much involved with the company. And we're happy to have his group involved. And that is how we have drills on site. And that's why we're getting so much work done right now, because we have dedicated, committed shareholders that are also advisors. So in summary, we've got the three symbols. We're trading primarily on the CSE, although I noticed we did 250,000 shares of volume on the OTCQB today. We did announce DTC eligibility recently, so that's added to the volume on the OTC. We have 18.3 million shares, 21 fully diluted, and that includes 970,000 shares of a convertible debenture. Convertible debenture was done at 60, the conversion with a forced conversion at maturity. So we have shareholders that are very committed, and they're really looking forward to us succeeding. So I think what is interesting is the press release. Some have seen it, some haven't, but the press release this morning, we announced drill holes 3 and 4 out of the 7 holes. The new results were 5 meters of 5.3 grams at a depth of 114.5 meters, but that included a meter of 18.5 grams and 0.7 meters of 4.3 grams. And what's really nice about that is it just further confirms, and you can see on the revised cross-section A, that we've got good continuity of those interpreted mineralized zones. But what's interesting on this cross-section is almost 10 meters wide. So we tried to show as much data on the cross-section as we could. The new results, of course, being in yellow. Both of these interpreted zones are open at depth, and they're open to the east and they're open to the west. So it's really good news. We're focusing on getting a better feel for both of these zones, and the fact that they're both open along strike and at depth is great news for us. We will continue to drill in the vicinity of the Miller Shaft while we try to get a much stronger feeling for the structure and how the mineralization is controlled. I know that some of the holes we drilled in the first group were so fractured and so broken that it didn't look like core in the drill boxes. It was broken up. So that's obviously something you have to be aware of, and it's yet another reason that we're excited. It's not very often that your first 4 holes all have gold in them, and so we're enthusiastic because the gold appears to primarily be in the quartzite, and we're seeing lots of quartzite. So it's a good sign, and we're really looking forward to this next round of drilling and to getting the final 3 holes out when we receive those assays. That is Graycliff in a nutshell.
Thanks very much, Jamie. And maybe what I'll ask you to do is maybe just pull your presentation down so we can have a quick little chat, the two of us, because I noticed that your camera is on when you get rid of the presentation. But what I will say maybe, because we got a couple questions that have come in here.
Okay.
One is with regards to the Miller shaft. So what's the depth that the Miller shaft and the old mineralization went to? And are these the zones that you are currently chasing after?
So when they sank the Miller shaft, they did it by hand. It was an exploration shaft. So what they were trying to do was find further samples that were up in that 200 ounces per ton range. Now, they obviously found some because they didn't do that. They didn't actually extract that much ore, and they took out 3,000 ounces. But the shaft went as far down as about 300 feet, as far as we can tell at this point. The records weren't required to file assessment reports, so there's not a lot of information. And $20 an ounce meant that anything that was less than, significant numbers just didn't get touched. So that's what we're looking at. The number 3 adit, we believe, was to extract ore from the upper levels near the shaft, because that is, as I mentioned earlier in the presentation, the fact that all of the intersections in those cross sections, they were all above ground. So say if you want a hand wave, that we were able to actually get a very significant amount of ore just around the old shaft, we could literally go in and drop it onto the number 3 adit and pull it out and truck it to Sudbury. So it's a very different kind of situation than an awful lot of other deposits in the area. And of course, it's a brownfield site already, so some of the ground is patented.
Then a follow-up question here: with such a tight share structure, not many shares outstanding, obviously, what's the current float that you have, or available float to the market? And would you be looking to do another raise to expand this drill program on the back of the results that you just had?
So great question. With essentially 20 million shares and 40%, you can do the math. That's what we believe the float is. However, there's an awful lot of people that have been buying recently and setting a new base at 60. So I think the honest float, or the real float, is probably less than 5 million shares right now. But it's interesting that you said that, because of course, people start calling you when you have good results and say, "Do you need more money?" Which is a nice problem. So we're hoping that once this first round is done and we get the second round of 1,000 to 1,500 meters, that we'll probably go back and raise some more. I know that doing permitting to open a drift is not inexpensive, but we didn't want to rush it because the Ministry of Natural Resources because everyone's working from home. They're just not responding fast.
No, for sure. And a follow-up question to that, which has come through from another individual: do you see there being parallel structures to the areas that you've currently hit on the property, and will you be exploring those as well?
Absolutely, we do. In our field sampling, which was an earlier release, there's a section to the northeast, and we had 3% copper in a grab sample from surface. So the chalcopyrite and pyrite, we're even seeing pyrrhotite in some of the drill holes. We didn't release any of the sulfides in our numbers, but I have copper numbers that are 0.5% copper that are sitting alongside some of these gold values. So there's definitely multiple structures, and that's why we're focusing around the shaft, so that we can really get a good handle, so that when we go out along strike, we're hitting the right structure.
That's great. And I would definitely mention that this was the maiden drill program. I think we should reiterate that, because a lot of companies have gone up on raising capital, significant amounts of capital, and being able to go and do a big drill program once the money started flowing into our industry. And I think we're seeing that now for Graycliff, and it's still a very, very early entry point for guys that want to get involved. It's a sub $10 million market cap company with the results that they hit today, up to about 10% today. But this is only just the beginning, it seems. So congratulations to you and your exploration exploration team on the great results today, and we very much look forward to working with you and having further results down the road.
Well, we're really excited, Seb, to work with you. And you know, just if anyone's wondering, we still have $750,000 to do exploration right now, and most of that is earmarked for exploration. Obviously, we are very much aware, as we're all shareholders. Everyone in Graycliff is a shareholder. Nobody works for the company that's not a shareholder. So we all want to see the money spent very wisely, and so we're pretty excited.
That's great. We look forward to your next batch of results, and we thank everybody for joining. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to reach out to your Red Cloud rep, and we'll be happy to go and direct them to Jamie and his team. Thanks, everybody, and enjoy the rest of the show.
Thanks a lot, Seb.